This is my second video for my B5 assignment. I'm now going to be talking through the combat music that I made, and this is music that I wanted to play whenever the player engaged in combat with an enemy, essentially. So if I just play a little segment of this, you'll hear a little kind of transition at the start. So I took some inspiration from this. Most of this was Pokemon combat music, which I'll put on my website and explain a bit about. But I just want to take just a brief look at the drums. So if you remember in the last video, I talked about how I made my drums with the ES2 synthesizers. I did the same thing essentially with these because I wanted to carry on that 8-bit sound. I'll go through them very briefly because they're very similar. But the only real difference is these drum sounds have a lot more of attack to it, apart from the hi-hat. I decided to use an open hi-hat sound because I was very inspired by like some kind of metal pieces where a lot of them seem to have like really loud hi-hats, often like crashes, but I didn't want that. But if we just take a listen. So you can see it's got a lot of that sustained sizzle in there, which I really wanted. And then that's because if you look at the third envelope, which is attached to the noise oscillator here, we've got a lot of that kind of bit more decay than the other ones had, just a tiny bit, and then the same with the sustain. But the release is the big difference because I did want it to kind of snap back off to the initial point quite quickly, and that made it sound very loud and kind of obnoxious, to be honest. It was a nice kind of way to emulate a metal sound or a hard rock sound. And I've got I'm cutting some of those low frequencies out, and I've also got some hard distortion on there, which is different to the other ones, which had some soft distortion. Very simple. If we just look at the effects actually quickly, I've got some EQ boosting those high frequencies and more, but adding just a tiny bit of body to it. Because it is an open hi-hat at the end, you don't want it to be too sizzly. And we've got some reverb on there, which I think made it sound a little bit more like a crash, which I quite liked. Just a really kind of loud, wet cymbal, which is the sound I wanted. I'll just take a look at that quickly. You can see I've got those mids that are really being reverberated here. I'll play. So not by much. We've just got a bit of a wet mix. And just not much dry, and it's not that big either, because if I would have put it too big, it would have sounded a lot more like a crash. I just wanted a bit of that in there. And we've got a bit crusher on there, which I found for this piece, adding bit crushers onto my drums, as you can see, made them sound a lot more fitting for that kind of loud rock kind of sound. Again, similar with the snare, using a noise oscillator, and I've got some decay and on there that was very similar to the open hi-hat actually, but because I wanted them to sound quite similar. But if you just take a listen to this, you can hear as well. You can hear some of those lower frequencies and the mids, which is really good for making it sound really loud, and had some body to it, which was different to the other snare in the other piece. I've got some compression on there, not too much, but I didn't want it to be too loud and too punchy, so I put the ratio quite low there. And again, also got some reverb on the low end, low to mid, which is great for giving a lot of room to that body. And then the bit crusher, I've mixed it quite high. Put quite a bit of drive on there, and I've clipped it. The resolution, I wanted it to sound quite messy, so I did that and downsampled it, so it had some of those lower frequencies that were getting distorted. I've also got a couple of buses there for reverb, which is the same kind of reverb you saw on the Koto. I use buses on a lot of these If you take a look at the kick, I didn't want this to be too low end because if you listen later, there's some bass. There's quite a lot of bass to it, which is I didn't want them to conflict too much. But I have got a boost here, but it doesn't punch through that much because the quality is quite low. The Q factor on it's quite low. And then I have also got a bit of sizzle to it, which I wanted to really maintain that brushy sound. I won't go through the synthesis because it's the same patch as the other kick for my other one, but most of this is for editing. So again, I've added some gain because it wasn't quite loud enough. I did add, as well as the bit crusher, I added some other distortion to put a bit of a dirty kind of tone in there, which I really liked. And I've got some compression just so it wasn't really loud and overpowering. And that's the basic gist of the kick there, actually. So if I go through these synthesizers, again, these were stock patches that I edited and tweaked myself. I wanted that kind of evil kind of dissonant sound to the melody, so I did that, and I wanted it to be quite busy and quite fast. As you can see, there's quite a lot of notes here. But the main sound for this, I took a lot of inspiration from the Pokemon battle music, which I'll put onto my website as well. There's a lot of distortion with the bit crusher here. It's not mixed too much, but as you can see, the drive is on 10 for this one on the left. Again, I've panned them very similar to my my other piece. If I show you this, this panned to 32 and 32, 32 left and 32 right, which is nice because it added a lot of body and made it sound quite stereo and powerful. Which, if you think of a lot of rock tracks, that's kind of how they often go. Again, I've got some reverb on mostly the high ends, the high end frequencies, to give a little bite and sizzle and make those sound like it's in a room. And yeah, that's the reverb that's added as well, just to all of the frequencies there. I've also got oh yeah, this is where the sidechain comes in as well. I've got a sidechain which is on the kick, which you can hear that when the kick comes in, this is dropped only very slightly. It's very subtle, but it made the kick punch through a lot more, which I really wanted. The right synth isn't much different. I'll show you them both separately. So you can hear that the ES2, that's got quite a lot more sustain on it, whereas this other one should have a bit as well. But it's a lot quieter, and I kind of like that. As you can see, it's got sustain. They're very similar patches actually, but the only difference is really the one on the left is a bit more attacky, and this one's a lot softer, but taken through with some of the distortion and the tones there, and the cutting that I've done. This sound here, I wanted to just fill in. It's not very noticeable, but I just wanted it to add a bit of dynamic. It doesn't play through the first bit here. It's the same melody. I just reverbed it, and it was quite nice to add in a bit of variation to it. Got some delay there. What it really is a bit. It's quite slow, quite fast, but not too fast, you know. So it was quite nice to make it not sound too cluttered, but you know, it was quite low in the mix, so it wasn't overpowering either. Just added a slight little variation. I've got some buses, the same reverb swirl as the Koto from the other video that I showed, and a bit of a stereo direction mixer there. Again, some compression to just you know, make it not too overpowering, and to really even out some of the range there using the classic VCA. And I've also got I experimented with some other reverb that I decided not to mix in. This was really interesting. So in the Pokemon music, they had like these staccato kind of stabs to come in every now and then, just to, you know, add a bit of a powerful sound to it. So if I just play this with, well, I'll just play the whole thing. So that stab you heard then was this, and it comes in. And I've also got, yeah, it was really interesting, but it comes in on the first and third beats, I believe anyway, and then we've got on this original staccato stab, we've got some really high ends because I wanted it to sound, you know, really stabby and sizzly, and I've also got a very slight mix on there and here, just to add a bit more body to it, and so it wasn't really high end. And that was just made from a stock patch that I then decided to edit myself and do some interesting things with. I've got some reverb on there. It made it sound really powerful adding reverb. I found it made it sound like a lot more powerful in the mix, which I wanted. I wanted this to be really overpowering because it wasn't in throughout the whole song. It came in every now and then. And then I also just put that over a delay version of that. If I just show you that. That's also very quiet in the mix. You can't hear it because this kind of overpowers it, but it adds a bit of a nice underlayer to it. It's just got some delay there. That's the delay, as you can see, and some reverb as well, and then got some low ends that the other stab here didn't have, so it fills in for those, as you can see. I then wanted to add some a little guitar thing over it because, again, I was inspired by some metal and hard rock tracks. So I just had like a lead guitar rhythm, and I found that the Pokemon tracks also use similar kind of sounds to this. So I thought the guitar was a good way of doing that. So if you just take a listen to this. Still maintaining that kind of dangerous kind of sound, which is what you want for combat music, really. And it also added another layer of depth onto it, so it changed a lot in the dynamics, which is really cool. We've got an amp on this, which has got a little bit of EQ on there. I didn't do much because I did most of my EQ work on there, but as you can see, there's some gain, and I wanted that American sound, that hard rock kind of American sound, and I wanted it to be quite present, so I put that quite high as well. And I messed around with the mic placement as well on that amp because I wanted it to sound quite live. I've also got some chorus on there. If you just listen on tone, not very prominent, but it is very subtle, and it adds a bit of variation in the sound, so it doesn't just sound too. Because the thing with MIDI guitars, they often sound very kind of boring on their own, so you have to add a lot of effects, and that was just another effect that I could add to make it sound a lot more interesting. And it also added to that kind of dangerous, eerie kind of sound, which I wanted. So this one just sat underneath that other one. This is a lot more overpowering, but I are panned, as you can see. I added some tremolo, because I wanted this one to sound really quiet but still really eerie, and the tremolo really helped with that. And again, I've also got the American sound, but I wanted this to be clean. If it wasn't clean and distorted, it would have had a really overpowering sound to it. And then I also had a bus. That's just going straight to the limiter bus that I had there if I wanted to make something a lot more quieter. And obviously, if I had two guitar sounds that were really, really loud, it would have been really overpowering, so I just wanted one of them to be a lot more quieter. And then we have this kind of trance bass line going throughout the whole piece. And that's really interesting because that pans left and right for the whole thing, and it's got some delay. It was really interesting. If I just show you the delay here. So I've got it on about 294 ms. There was a nice timing for it. It basically copied it exactly how it was before. I didn't want it too long because it would have sounded really cluttered then. Yeah, that's basically all I did with it. I didn't have too much feedback again because it would have gone on for too long and really cluttered. So yeah, that's all I did with that. And then the EQ here. All I really did was boost some 1K because I wanted those distorted frequencies to come through a bit. But I also made some of these low mids and the lows punch through a lot more, which is really interesting. So yeah, that was my second combat piece. And And that was a little look on the process of how I made that.